Well, hello, welcome again to our reading of the Greek New Testament and reading through 1 Corinthians and chapter 9, and I got halfway through verse 12, which splits across a paragraph, so starting with the Allah. So, al uk ekresametha te exousia taute alapanta stegomen, hiname tina ek kopain, domen to euangelio tu Christu. Uk oidati hoti hoi ta hira ergadzomenoi ta ek tu hiru esthiusin. Hoi to thusiasterio, paredru ontes to thusiasterio, sum merisdontai. Hutos kai hokurios dietaxen tois to euangelion, cat angelusin ek tu euangeliutsein. Ego de kekremai udeni tuton. Uk egrapsa de tauta hinahutos genetai en emoi. Kalon ga moi malon apothenein tokauma mu udes kenose. Ian ga euangelisdomai to euangelisdomai, ukestimoi kaukema, anenke gamoi epiketai. Now this is from the verb kraomai. This is the aorist middle. Now he's been talking about in the earlier section about his own authority and the authority of the apostles and so on, and saying all the things that the other apostles, the other authority that the other apostles have that Paul and Barnabas don't seem to, and he says, but have not made use of this authority. It's almost this authoritative right. Alapanta stegomen. Now, stego in classical Greek means to cover something up. So you get a word like stege as a roof and various other forms here, so to cover. It comes to mean, however, to endure, to put up with. And you'll need to look at perhaps the commentaries on explaining that word shift of meaning, but here it certainly has that sense of to cover. This is in later Greek, and I think it's used elsewhere with that meaning in the New Testament. So we endure or we put up with all things, hiname, in order that we might not give, aorist subjunctive from didomi, any enkopain, any hindrance. It's that idea of a copto, of stumbling again, something you hit yourself against. So in order that we might not give any hindrance to the gospel of Christ. Uk oidati, do you not know that? That's one of these standard tropes in Paul that he uses. So are you not aware that, and it makes it in the form of a question, that those literally working in the sacred things. Now I think this hira here is actually a neuter adjective from hieros, meaning sacred as an adjective, and tahira, the sacred things. So those that are working at the sacred things, who are labouring at sacred things, do you not know that esthiusi, that they eat, and then in brackets ta, the things, ektu hiru, I think this is probably from hieron. You can't tell from the accent, unfortunately, but hieron is the temple. So I think this is actually the adjective, neuter plural, and I think this is the temple. So do you not know that those engaged in holy matters eat from the temple? And those paredruontes, paredruo, it's got that head root here. Hedruo is to sit beside. So it's literally those who sit beside the, it's taking a dative after the para, those who sit beside the thusiasterion, this is the altar, And as I've mentioned in earlier videos, this is the standard term in biblical Greek, Septuagint and New Testament, for the Jewish altar. It's a rare word outside of biblical Greek, which normally uses bomos for the pagan altar, but the biblical writers were always fastidious in using this word for the Jewish altar, which is what it is here, I think. So those who sit beside the altar, sun merizontai, they have, so this is from meros, a part or portion, so they have a portion with the thusiasterio, the altar. It is connected with thusia, sacrifice, so in other words they share in the sacrifice, but it's the altar, share in the things of the altar perhaps. Hutos gar, thus the Lord dietaxin has ordained, or has commanded, or has arranged from diatasso, this is the aorist. Now this is tois goes with the katangelusi. This is a dative plural participle from katangelo, one of Paul's favourite words of proclaiming. So the Lord has decreed that for those proclaiming the gospel, saying, infinitive from tsao, to live, ek tu euangelio, by means of the gospel. So thus the Lord has commanded that those who proclaim the gospel, that they live by means of the gospel. Ego de u kekremai udeni tuto, but I have not made use, this is the perfect from this kra amai verb, to use, so I have not made use, and it takes a dative, none of these things. Greek has double negatives, don't cancel in Greek, so we would say any. So I have not made use of any of these things. U egrapsa, I did not write these things. Now hina, in order that it might be thus in me, so in my case I think here. So I did not write these things that they might be in this way in my case. In other words, that I might make use of these rights. Kalon gar moi malon apothenai a, for it is good for me rather to die, in other words, I would rather die than, and now unfortunately the we get an anakaluthon here, where Paul breaks the sentence off midstream and doesn't finish it. Paul does this quite a lot, well, not a huge amount, but you'll get plenty of examples of these anakalutha in Paul. I've often thought perhaps it's a sign that he's getting quite emotional and worked up at this point, and so he goes off on a tangent and never finishes his sentence. So he says, I would rather die than, and then he says, no one, kenose, will make vain, will make empty my boast. And then he doesn't finish the sentence. The editor here has put a dash here to show us that the sentence has not been finished. Ean gar eu angelizomai uk esti moi kalkema. For if I might proclaim the gospel, it is not a boast for me. So it's not a boast for me that I proclaim the gospel, for ananke epiketai moi, necessity lies upon me, from epikemai. This is actually quite a classical sentence, really. You could come across this in classical Greek. It's very classical, really. For necessity lies upon me. It's almost poetic here. Uai gar moi, for woe or alas. This is this uai, alas, woe to me. And then we get esti, so they're taking that that woe as a noun almost. So it would be a source of woe for me if I did not proclaim the gospel. So we're going to air a subjunctive here from euangelisdomai. So it would be a sign of woe for me if I did not proclaim the gospel. Ega hekon tuto proso miston echo, e de akon oikonomian pepistumai, tis un muesti homistos, hina euangelizomenos a dapanon theso tot euangelion, estome catacresastai te exousia mu ento euangelio. Hekon is it's really an adverb. It looks a little bit like a sort of adjective or participle. You can see it as an adjective, probably is the easiest way. It's a good classical word, in fact. And the opposite of this is akon. So these are antonyms. This is really just an alpha privative put in front of this one, and then the aspirate disappears and you get a contraction. So hekon means willing and akon means unwilling. Probably best to think of it as an adjective, third declension. So for if I do this thing willingly, so I'm taking it here as an adverb. So if I do this thing willingly, or rather if I as a willing person do this, I have a reward. And that's probably the grammar here. It's really an adjective, but in English we take it as an adverb. So if I do this thing as a volunteer, almost as a willing person, I have a reward. But if as one who is unwilling, pepistumai oikonomian, I have been entrusted. This is the perfect passive from pistuo, often used in the sense of I have been trusted, so I have been entrusted, with an oikonomian, with a commission, literally an administration, originally the organising of the house. So administration, and hence it comes to mean commission. So if I do it unwillingly, I have been entrusted with a commission. Tis un muesti homistos, and what therefore is the reward, is my reward. And we get hina here, that proclaiming the gospel, I will place the gospel adapenon, free of charge. And this is the point that he's constantly making, that he doesn't get any money out of the various congregations he comes to. So what reward is there? No, it's something like, it is in order that, the reward is that, theso, future from tithemi, I might, proclaiming the gospel, I might place the gospel adapenon, free of charge. This is alpha privative. There's a verb dapenao, to spend, and this is just an adjective formed from that, so free of charge. So as not to make use of, this is this kata kraamai verb, now with a kata. This is an aorist middle infinitive. So as not to make use of my authority in the gospel. So as not to make use of that in the gospel. And that's the next part of chapter 9.